Hi, I'm PB and welcome to PB's Dice Den. I'm talking to you from the future where I have no hair anymore. In this video we're going to be doing a bit more of a deep dive into the full user interface on Foundry without any modules installed. It's a long one because there's a lot to cover. I thought about splitting it up, but really there was no easy point to split up. But there are chapters below if you're just interested in a particular setting or anything like that. So yeah. Hope you enjoy the video, and I'll see you back in the past. Bye! Because you just created a world, you won't have anyone in there just yet, so it's just you as the game master. I'm going to click launch, and it's going to give you a couple of tutorials, and you can see how much simpler the user interface on the left hand side is without any modules activated. So, basically, first and foremost, we need to probably have some sort of map to work from. So, as I mentioned before, over on the right hand side we've got the different user interfaces to navigate around. We've got the chat window, this is where dice rolls will appear and where people can type in messages and what have you. You can see here Foundry has given me two ones just as a heads up already, like basically tutorial stuff, giving me some ideas of how I can set up to begin and also how to invite players. It's suggesting that we first of all create some players by going to the user management section. I can either click the user management section here and it'll take me there, or I can click the cogwheel up at the top here and then go to user management. And then I just need to create an additional user. I can give them a name, I can give them a password, I can configure their permissions. So players can have different permissions from trusted players, from assistant GMs, and then GMs. So yeah, you can really get quite granular with what different permissions different people can have, and then you can then select what profile, essentially what role this particular user I've created is. So player 2, I could make a player, a trusted player, assistant GM, or GM. I normally just leave it as player because, to be fair, I don't trust my players. No, I'm kidding. It's they don't need the different features that a trusted player gets, but you might want that. I don't know. Once you've created all of your users, obviously you can just create multiple. Just click save and return. It'll bring you back here, nice and easy. So up on the right hand side, let's quickly create a map. So the scenes section of your UI is going to be where we can create maps. So if I click create scene, I can give it a name. Let's just give it a test again. I'm very lazy with the names. And you can immediately see it loads up the map, but there's nothing on the map just yet. We can then create some very basics. So I can create a background image, and I'm just going to use this Cantina map that I have just in my data folder, not even in a specific world. What I tend to do is I tend to go into my worlds folder, because all of your worlds folders we're going to test, as an example, will have a scenes folder, and you can just upload images or put images in that folder. So if I go into Dragon Riders as an example and go into the scenes folder here, there you go, I've got all of my different images for all of my different maps. It just means that when I'm choosing the file for my scenes, they're just in a logical place for them. But technically they don't have to be in the scenes folder, or they don't, you can take them from another scenes folder if you wanted to. So I could upload one from I don't know, let's use one that's already been used in Dragon Riders. Sure, this is a map I made. So it doesn't have to be in the folder of the world that you're in, but it makes sense to have them in the world. You can then go to I tend to turn off the grid personally. I don't like playing with grids, so I can adjust the grid size, and I can also turn off the grid or make it hexagonal or what have you. So I'm going to set it as gridless, and I usually set the grid size to 70. Reason why is just because a lot of the map packs I use or map assets that I use are made by Gabriel Picard, and it seems that 70 was kind of his default on Roll20. I think it might even be the default on Roll20, or at least it was. So that's just kind of my go-to. I can always adjust it if I need to afterwards. It was going to tell you the scene dimensions. I tend to leave that as it is because it's just going to be correct for the map that I've uploaded in the basic section. It's also going to give you some padding, which is just the area around the map. So we can see at the moment this like square is going to be the actual map, and this is just like an area that I can access that the players can't. So if I can like put some monsters in there or what have you that they're not going to see. Grid scale, so it defaults to 5 feet because a lot of tabletop role-playing games use feet. Or to be fair, actually, it might be defaulting to that because I'm running D&D 5th edition. It might be different if you run a different system, but it defaults to 5 feet, which makes sense if you're playing D&D 5th edition. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. That just means that each grid is worth 5 feet in distance. Obviously, I could change that if I wanted to. If we go to the lighting menu, I can also choose some other settings here. So token vision basically means that visibility for a player will be based on what their token can see. So we can assign a token to a player, and then we can say how much vision that token has, and then the player will see what their token can see, and then you put in walls and what have you, and they won't be able to see through those walls and such like. Fog explosion, you can use Fog of War, which is basically where as they explore a map, the map gets revealed to them. I can even upload a Fog of War image. So if you've watched Dragon Riders, I might be really snazzy here and cut to an example of this from one of our streams. We have it so that the world map has a Fog of War on it that just looks like the world map without text on it. So it basically, rather than the Fog of War just being darkness, they can see the outline of the world, they just can't see what places are in the world until they get to them. I quite like it for world maps. I don't think it's necessarily needed for all environments, but you can use it if you want to. You know, if the character would know the layout of a building, then it makes sense for you to not hide the layout, but you can still hide what's in the building. Global illumination. I tend to tick this on unless I'm knowing that a scene is going to be dark. Basically, it just means that I don't need to put lights in the scene to light up the area. It's just bright. You can then also adjust the darkness level so you can make it globally lit but dark. And they've also got this really cool feature in Foundry, which is the global illumination threshold. And basically what this means is that if I set the global illumination threshold to like 0.7, and then I set the darkness to 0.7, then the map is considered to not be globally illuminated anymore. But if it's like 0.5, it's still considered to be globally illuminated. What this basically means is that I can adjust the darkness on the fly without having to go in and change whether it's globally illuminated or not. It's a really cool feature. I don't use it that much, but it's a really cool feature. If you have it toggled off, that just means that it's always globally illuminated, no matter how dark you actually make it. So those are some settings that I tend to do. You might find different ones, and then you've finally got an ambience tab where you can add a journal entry that relates to this map. You can add a page specifically within that journal entry that relates to this map. You can add a musical playlist. You can have specific sounds you want to be played from that playlist in the scene as you activate it, and you can also set some weather effects. Like if you wanted it to be raining, you could have it be raining. Let's go ahead and use that one as an example. Click Save Changes. It's going to apply everything that I've just done. It's going to say, hey, you're changing the underlying dimensions of the scene. Just click yes, and boom. We've now got the map that I created earlier. I say I created this actually. I didn't create this, tell a lie. I was going to create this and I ran out of time. So this is a pre-made one by Gabriel Picard. I completely misspoke earlier. I 100% planned to make the castle myself, and as I say, ran out of time. So yeah, this is a pre-made map by Gabriel Picard, and so shout out to him and his wonderful maps. You can find them, Drive-Thru RPG, Roll20's Marketplace, etc. And it's got that raining effect that we put on. I could turn that off if I wanted to by just going into Configure and turning off. There are other ways to control weather with modules, but that's just like the bog standard that comes without any modules. Cool, so that's a map. I can have folders for maps, obviously, so I can sort them that way. And then if I have multiple maps, I can switch between them fairly easily. On the right hand side, once again, we've got actors. Once again, you can create a folder if you want to. I tend to do that because I like my actors organized, but if I want to create an actor, just click the Create Actor. Actors are characters, either player characters or NPCs, including, you know, monsters and you know, guards and what have you. I tend to make named NPCs as player characters in terms of what type of character sheet I want to use, just because I like the player character sheet more. It allows you to go into more detail. But yeah, you can see here, I've got the choice between creating a player character, a non-player character, a vehicle, and a group. So I do player character. Let's do this one, test PC, create new actor. It's going to launch the character sheet. And this is basically Foundry's version of the D&D 5th edition character sheet. Once again, just a note, Wizards of the Coast have teamed up with Foundry. I'm not on that version yet. I know that the character sheet is going to look different if you're running the newest version of D&D 5th edition. I don't know how different it's going to look, but I know it is going to look different. Anyways, I'm not going to go through a full tour of this, but it's a character sheet. Let's quickly create another actor, and let's name this one Test NPC, just so we can compare two character sheets that you might use a lot in 5e. You can see that the NPC and the PC are slightly different in terms of their character sheets. The NPC doesn't have an entire inventory tab. Their weapons will just end up in features. They've got spell books and effects still, etc. You can also set a challenge rating for NPCs, which you can't do for player characters, but player characters get levels and XP and such like instead. This can look a little bit scary at first, and particularly if you're going in kind of fresh, you probably don't have a lot to add to these character sheets, but I'm going to break it down a little bit more. So first of all, we've got this little hooded figure image here. This is just like the bog standard image that all characters start with. Let's just go in, click that, and it's going to take us back into an image browser, and we can then find an image for this character. This is where good folder management comes in handy. So I have a D&D 5e stuff. I also have a token art map. The token art map is my Star Wars token art map, and again, you want to try and avoid renaming folders. So come up with a good name for them in the first place, or at least remember what you use them for. So I know token art is for my Star Wars token art, whereas D&D 5e has a token art folder that's just for D&D artwork. And sure, we're going to go with Aarakocra, why not? So I'm just going to select that file. Boom. So now, if I'm looking at my actors on the right hand side, I can see Test PC has a nice image next to them. Now, prototype token, if I click into this, it automatically grabs the image I put into here as the token image too. And what that means is that if I drag Test PC onto the map, that's the image that represents them. But I can have these be different if I want to. So this can be the image for the character sheet. If I wanted to, I could have a different image for the token. You know, if you want to use like top-down artwork for your characters within the world, then maybe you want to have that be what you see on the map, but you want to see the character's face when they're on the character sheet. So all we need to do is click on the character sheet, prototype token. And by clicking prototype token, we're changing it forever. If I double click on them, you'll see that instead it says token rather than prototype token. That means I'm just changing it for this one map. So if I change this one real quick to, let's do, sure, Arctic Elder. I don't even remember what Arctics are. There we go. It's this weird tentacle thing. So the artwork on the character sheet is still the Birdman, but on the map it's the weird tentacle thing. But because I didn't change the prototype token, if I drag this character onto the map again, the token's still the Birdman. So if I click the character sheet here and do prototype token, let's change that again, and this time let's make it an acolyte, and then drag it on, you see that it's changed permanently. So you can change a token for a particular scene, but keep it the same permanently, or vice versa. So yeah, that's the basics of token art. There is a lot more details you can go into here, like changing the size. You can tint it, you can mirror it, you can make it, you know, not 100% opacity. You can change their vision. So if you are saying that a character has to have vision to be able to see on the map, you want to make sure that you actually give them a vision range. So you could give like 30 feet as an example. You can even change the vision mode. You can get really, really granular with this stuff. So, next up, on the right-hand side, we've got items, this little briefcase symbol. Items are literally everything else, pretty much, for a character sheet. They're not just like physical items that that character is going to be carrying, like a sword or a bow or whatever, anything that's going to go on this character sheet. So you can see at the moment I don't have anything. If I click create item, I could create an item from here. But to be honest with you, let's say that you are going to be running 5th edition D&D, you probably don't want to be sat here creating every single item, including features and spells and classes and races and such. Like, you don't want to be sat there doing everything. Now, in a later video, I'll cover some really, really good ways to bring stuff in super easily. But for now, we're going to leave that, and I'll show you what you can do as a baseline without any other modules. We're going to skip a couple of these buttons and just go straight to Compendium packs, the second to last one. And here, you can see, without me having done any modules or anything else, I've got a folder that says D&D 5e SRD content. So what that means is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition standard reference document content. If you don't know what the standard reference document is, it's basically Wizards of the Coast allows anyone to reference the SRD and use the SRD in basically anything. It's free stuff. So you can run D&D 5e without buying any books because the SRD is completely free. But if you want all of the cool stuff, you want to buy the books. So because there's no way at the moment for Foundry to know that I own any of the books, which I own on D&D Beyond, it's just giving me the SRD stuff for free. But it's a good demonstration of what we can do. So rather than me going in and creating a sword, let's just look for a sword by going to items and spells, items, SRD. Now, from a compendium, I can just search for an item here. Let's do sword. This is the issue, is that there are lots of different swords. Let's go long sword. There we go. That's narrowed it down a little bit more. And I can just drag it directly from the compendium. Now, this does mean that I'm going to have to go to the compendium every single time I want to find a long sword, which is a bit of a pain. So what I personally do is I import the compendiums into the game fully. It means that it needs to load more things when I'm launching my game. Because compendiums, it doesn't really need to load because it can load them when I click into this folder. You can see there was a little bit of a delay there. But by bringing them into the game properly, it does mean that basically I don't need to go searching for it as much. So to bring it into the game properly, I'm just going to right click this and do import all content. It's going to ask me where I want to put this. I can put it in an existing folder, but I don't have any existing folders, or it's going to create a new folder for me. I'm just going to go, yeah, that's fine. It's importing 805. There we go, it's done. So it didn't take very long to do, but now I go here, I now have an items folder, and I could then search for longsword here, which I think is a little bit easier. For me personally, I like to have it even more granularly broken down, so I don't have an items folder, I have a items folder, which then has a weapons folder, and then within the weapons folder, I've got my melee weapons folder, because while I might use the search bar, and probably do use the search bar more often than not, if I can't remember the name of something, but I know what type of thing it is, I can find it pretty quickly by having it be in subfolders rather than it just being all. This is currently a folder of 805 things, and not all of them are weapons. So I do personally painstakingly move them all into subfolders, but once you've done that once, you never have to do it again. And by bringing this longsword in, it knows the weight of the item, it knows it has a description, it knows the price, it knows what damage it does, and this will all be automated based on the stats that I give this character. So at the moment, I've not given them any stats. They're just very, very basic. He's not going to get no bonuses to using his longsword, but if I just go to his inventory and click longsword, it's going to pop it in the chat. I can click attack. It's going to apply my bonus of 0. Roll a 16, and I can do my damage. It's going to do 1d8 plus 0. Nice and easy. So again, there's no extra bonuses I'm currently getting because I haven't actually done anything with this character sheet, but theoretically I could, build in all of his stat bonuses and what have you, and it would all automate that for me. So that's items, and as I say, it's not just for physical items. Items is used for all sorts of things that we'd want on that character sheet. So if we looked at spells as an example, let's drag Acid Arrow onto the character sheet. That's not going to show up in my inventory because it's not a physical item, but it is a spell, so it shows up in my spell book. If I wanted, let's say, a class, I could just drag Barbarian onto the character sheet, and it's going to start leveling them up as a level 1 Barbarian. That's my saving throws that it's doing for me. I then select some skills. I personally don't usually make characters within Foundry. Again, I'll cover that in a later video, but it does do some automation for you here. It's just telling me all the different things that I'd get as level 1 Barbarian. Nice and easy. I then click complete, and boom, I've got my Barbarian. Got all the information about that. He's got his rage. He's got his unarmored defense. I've got my hit points here. It's automatically working out my AC based on the unarmored defense rules, etc. It's automating a bunch of it for me. So, as I say, without doing anything extra, you get all of the SRD for free. You even get some starter heroes, top-down tokens. There you go. You've got Aoth, the human druid. Also, got some standard reference monsters. If I click the right folder, let's try that again. So let's bring in an acolyte. There you go. So it's enough to get started. And then if you want to bring anything else in, as I say, I'll cover that in a later video, but you could just go through and make it all yourself manually by clicking create items, and then you can choose what type of item you want to create. So if you wanted to create a new class, you would do test class, and you'd fill in the details here, etc. I'm not going to go through the full ins and outs of it, but that's the basics of it. So that's how compendiums work as well. As I say, you get all of that for free. You can also create your own compendiums, and you can choose what type of compendium you want. Here's a little pro tip as an example. If you're going to be making loads of maps, you don't need all of the maps populated in your game at any given time. You can always bring them into a compendium so that the game's not having to load the kind of metadata for them in the background when you're launching the game. It just makes getting in and out quicker. So yeah, you can create compendiums if you want, you can create folders, etc. Journal, it's a journal. You write journal entries in. So again, you can create folders, but test journal, I can then just add a page, backstory as an example, and then I just type a bunch of stuff there. I'm not actually going to write anything, I'm being very lazy. The journal's actually quite nice. It like auto does headers and what have you, so you get chapters alongside here, and you can then also decide whether this is visible to the players or not. So I can click configure ownership and make player 2 a viewer of it so that they can read it but not edit it, or I can make them the owner so they can edit it to their heart's content. I tend to give my players an in-game journal. I know that some of them like to write pen and paper, that's totally fine, but I like to give them an in-game journal so that they can write stuff in Foundry if they want to. You can also just make it so that all the players have the same ownership if you've got multiple players, so you don't have to do it one by one, but obviously you can give different access to different people. Role tables. Basically the tables that allow you to randomize stuff. I don't have any default ones because I don't have any modules installed, but a bunch of modules use them. But you can just create a role table, and basically you just say, hey, I want it to roll this dice, and it can be whatever dice number you want. So you can have it roll a 1d83 as an example, and then you just create a bunch of like different results based on if it lands on like 1 to 5, what happens. If it lands on 6 to 10, what happens. So you can do it for like randomized loot, randomized weather, randomized NPC species is one that I've used before. All sorts of things. It's just a randomizer for you, essentially a custom randomizer that you can build. Card stacks. I don't really use card stacks, but you can create card stacks, like a deck of cards in the game. I haven't really found a utilization for it yet. Sure, let's just do test again. There you go. You've got the just a standard deck of cards. As I say, I've never actually played with this, so I'm not even gonna try and explain it. But it's a deck system. Music. You can add music. You can create playlists and you can create folders. So if I create playlists real quick, test again. I'm really lazy with the names, you can't tell. And then you can say whether you want it to be sequential, so it plays one track, then a second track, then a third track. You can have it be shuffle, so it just randomizes the order. You can have it be simultaneous, so it plays everything at once, which is great if you're trying to create like a soundscape for like a forest or whatever. You could have the sounds of birds chirping in the trees, then the wind in the trees, and then maybe some rain. You can have them all being played at the same time. And soundboard only, which basically means that you choose individual sounds to play rather than playing everything in the playlist. So essentially kind of serves as just a folder at that point. And then you can click the Browse Files button and navigate to where you have music. Now, I don't think I mentioned this before, but when you're like trying to browse for things within your folders, you can only get to the stuff that's in your Foundry data folder. So this is why I tend to have basically everything in here. So I've got my music folder, and within my music folder, I've got various different folders within here. So like for Dragon Riders, I've got all my Dragon Riders music. It's all just from like video games basically. So if I wanted to add a particular song, let's say from Baldur's Gate 3, I've chosen that directory. And by doing that, it's just added everything. So that's bulk import. Let's delete that and show you how to just add one track instead. Test 2 Electric Boogaloo. So if I don't want to do a bulk import, I just click Update Playlist when I'm done, and then click this little plus symbol, and then you navigate to that specific file. You can set it to repeat, you can set the volume, and then update soundtrack. And then if I click this drop down arrow, there we go, got my playlist. And then to start playing it, I just click Play Playlist. And if I had multiple songs, then when I was done with this one, I could click Skip, and it would skip to the next one, etc. You can also adjust the volume on the fly. You can also see here you got your user volume controls. So if I control this volume, that controls it for everyone, but it's based on their own user preferences. So my playlists are going to by default play at 35%. But then if this is still too loud when it's at 35%, I can turn down this particular song, or I can turn it up if it's too quiet. But if I wanted all of the playlists to be louder, I can turn that up. So your players can adjust for themselves, but you can also adjust for particular songs. So if you import a particular music file or audio file that's just way too loud, you can turn it down and it'll be set to that volume. If you set it to 20%, it'll be 20% forevermore, and then individuals can still adjust that. And yeah, so you've got different volume settings for the playlists, so music and such like. Ambient, so if you're creating sounds on the map, which we'll get to in just a moment. And then interface, so things like the sounds of dice rolls, that sort of thing. So that's everything over there. The final thing is the cogwheel here, where we can configure some other things. So you can configure your settings, which is going to show you all your settings for all the modules you've got activated as well, which at the moment I've got nothing, so it's just the core settings and the D&D 5th edition settings. I can configure controls as well, which show you all the different like controls that you can use within the game. Fairly self-explanatory, and you can adjust those if you need to. And manage modules. So I've got 130 modules installed in Foundry, but none of them are currently active in this game world. So if I want to activate one of them, I simply go in here and I find it, and then I click the one that I want to click. Let's just show off a really basic one, because I'm not going to go through all of these right now. Sure, we'll go with Dice So Nice. That's my 3D dice settings. Click Save once you've activated the ones you want to activate. I recommend not selecting loads of them all at once and then potentially stuff breaking. If you're familiar with modding video games, kind of treat it the same way. Do a couple at a time, or one at a time if you really want to, and then just make sure it's working before adding more stuff. So some of the change settings require a reload of the application to take effect. Would you like to do that now? Just click yes, and it will reload the game pretty quickly for you. And then here we go, I'm getting a tutorial about 3D dice, but I could also go to configure settings, and you can see that my module settings for 3D dice is in here. So then I can go into my 3D dice settings, and I could say, yep, those are the 3D dice I want. I'm not showing off this module fully right now, because I'm, again, being super lazy. But then, if I load it up, let's say the Acolyte, go into the features, let's roll for the club, and then click attack. You should see 3D dice roll. So that's just a really basic module there. A really basic example of a module. It's actually probably a fairly complex module. But yeah, that's just a really quick example of a module. As I say, I'm probably going to go through loads of different modules on this channel at a later date. You need to edit the world, change its name, change anything like that. You can do that. Again, user management. I already showed that one, didn't I? You've got tour management, so you can like tell it what different tours people can get when they load into the game for the first time. So you can toggle different ones on and off, and you can also restart them if you need a refresher yourself. There you go. I'm not going to go through the tutorial, but get the idea. And then, you know, support stuff here and invitation links. So I actually don't know if this is going to show anything that I can show. So if I need to blur it, apologies. I absolutely need to blur that. So if you do port forwarding, then it's going to be a link that's basically like, I don't fully understand the technology, but for want of a better term, it's your IP address. It's not actually your IP address. It's not much better than that. So as I mentioned when I talked about like comparing different virtual tabletops, if you are doing port forwarding, make sure you're playing with people you trust, because this link isn't necessarily the best link to just be sharing with random people. You can just grab the link from here, and then you can then send it to people, you know, over Discord or whatever, and they click that link and it'll take them into the game, and then they can log in just like anyone else. If you want to log out, you can do that. If you want to return to setup, then that will shut the world down and take you back to the home page where we're back here. Launching the game one last time. Last couple of things to talk about is the UI over on the left hand side here. So let's just bring the Acolyte onto the map. Hello, Acolyte. So over the left hand side, it defaults to actor control. This allows me to click a token and move them around. A player will only be able to move around a token that you assigned them. So let's say that we wanted test PC to be assigned to player 2, which was that player character that we created, or that player user that we created. I just right click them, configure ownership, and then I can say that player 2 is the owner of test PC. But as a default, all other players don't have any access, or it can make them an observer or whatever. So click save changes. I would still be able to control test PC because I'm the game master, but if I had multiple players joining, they would only be able to control their tokens. And they won't be able to control NPCs and what have you, unless I give them permission. You can select targets, so basically click this and click this, and what that would do is show to other users that I'm targeting this character. Pro little tip, you can also just press T, and T will do it for you, so you don't even need to change what option you're holding onto. Measure distance, so I can measure like that. Again, little pro tip, you don't even need to click into these buttons here. I can just hold control and it does the exact same thing. Measurement controls for other stuff, so I can measure radiuses, I can measure cones, squares, etc. If you are doing grids, if you're using grids, then they will snap to grids, but because I use gridless, it means I can do whatever, which does make it slightly awkward if I want to do precise things like 30 feet sometimes, but I just prefer gridless. It's just nicer looking. You can obviously make the grid like completely invisible, but still like have grid movement and grid measurement, but I just prefer gridless. It's just like, it's fine. Once you stop dragging your different measurements, they stay on there, but I just right click this little symbol if I want it to disappear for a little bit, or I can hover over it and press delete. He says, there we go, to get rid of it entirely. And as the GM, I can clear all of them if I want to, if there's way too many. Tile controls, this is where I can just like upload other things to be part of the scene. So if I go to like tile browser, I can just, let's just drag this airship. Oh, that's a big airship. There we go, I've got an airship there. I can resize this if I need to. By holding Alt, it keeps it at the same scale, but if I let go of Alt, I can do whatever. So I can rescale that and go, yeah, that's better. If you do this one, it allows you to just kind of like choose the size beforehand, but same logic in terms of uploading. So it just like makes it fit that size beforehand. I tend to not use this one and just drag this one. Because, yeah, things might go in too big, but at least I know that they're going to be the correct, like, aspect ratio, and then I can just resize them as needed. So another thing you can do as well that's pretty cool with tiles is foreground layers. So if I right-click this, let's zoom out here. Got this little symbol here that makes it an overhead tile. What that means is that it appears on top of other things, which is pretty neat. You can see this little hole in the wing here, so if I move that to, like, there we go, I can see the acolyte through the hole. It's pretty nifty. I don't tend to use it that much because it can be a bit annoying when streaming with the modules I use for streams, but pretty cool if you're not streaming to like do rooftops and what have you, because from a player perspective, I don't control this player, there we go. Once I go underneath the overhead tile disappears, so I can use it for rooftops and what have you really quite easily. And then for people who aren't controlling that token, they see the overhead tile, so if this guy goes underneath here, they don't see him anymore. So yeah, pretty cool. And then if I need to control things that are rooftop tiles, I just need to click this little symbol here first, so that I'm controlling the foreground layer. Then I can move this around, whereas if I deselect it, then I can't move this around. Cool. This is a drawing tool. It allows you to draw stuff. You can do different types of drawings, including freehand. Oh, I've got one selected. Hold on. Unselect drawing real quick, and then we can do freehand. There we go. And you can do text. So yeah, different ones. And if I wanted to delete all the drawings, including text, simple as that. Walls. So if I wanted to make it so that a character can't see through a wall, I can just go into the walls menu here. There's loads of different wall types. I'm not going to go and explain them all because this video is already getting pretty long. I swear I try and keep them fairly short. But I can drag that, and then if I don't actually remember whether we gave this person vision or not, but let's try it. There you go. They won't be able to see through that wall anymore. Different wall controls just very quickly. You've got basic wall, which is this one here. You've got doors, which are things that people can't see through, but they can click the door to open it. You can also control whether they can open it or not by locking it. So that's pretty cool. There's windows, there's invisible walls, there's secret doors. Yeah, I'm not going to go through them all. Lighting tools. So if I click this light bulb, I can create a light. I can choose its radius. I can choose its color. I can choose an animation for it, so I can give it a flickering torch animation. I could make that way quicker, way more intense, or I could have it much chiller. I can change that animation to something completely different, like mysterious emanation. I can change the color intensity of that color. So yeah, you get quite a lot of control here. You've also got control over dim and bright light, and you can tell the difference, which is pretty neat. And then you've got some advanced options that I don't tend to mess with, but you can to your heart's content. You want to turn the light off, you right click it, turn it back on, right click it again, and delete it, left click, and delete. You can also transition a map to daylight and to darkness. So if you had set that global illumination, but then that global illumination threshold, when you transition to darkness, it means that that global illumination threshold is going to get hit. You can also reset the fog of war if the fog of war gets messed, and you can clear all the lights. You can also do ambient sound effects. So if I want there to be a particular sound effect coming from a certain area in the map, like a campfire, it's just like creating a light source on the map. I just drag a radius and choose a particular audio file, and you know, I would go into sound effects, wouldn't I? Not to music. Sure, let's do Star Wars sound effects. Oh, I clicked the wrong one again. I'm very bad at clicking things today, apparently. Star Wars sound effects. Sure. Heavy cloth in wind 1. There you go. The idea behind this is that then if I am controlling a token that is within this radius, I would hear the sound that I've chosen. But if I'm not standing within that radius, I don't hear it. We use this a lot on Star Wars Hand of the Republic. It was really, really cool. I really dove deep into going like, I'm going to do that this campaign. I haven't really used it in Dragon Riders though, because I'm still building up a database of like more fantasy sound effects. But yeah, it's really, really cool for immersion, such like, you know, if you want there to be, you know, the sound of a crackling fire, then as the players move within the radius of that crackling fire, they can hear it. They can hear, you know, people arguing through a door, that sort of thing. You can get really, really cool with this. If you want to like preview it, you just click this little symbol here. You want to delete them, you can. You can also, just like with lights, turn them off as well as needed. And finally, journal notes. So I can add a journal note onto the map. There you go. And I can say what I want that to link to. So the test journal, say what page. I can change the symbol, etc., etc. And there we go. That just means that if I'm like, hey, when they get to this door, I need to remind myself that there's like a password or whatever. There you go. I just left click it twice and it takes me directly to that journal entry. That is the UI. Last couple of things. Got the players down here, and you've got a macro thing here. Macros are just like basically scripts that you're telling it to run. You can get really complex with this as a GM. There's macros that you can find on like Reddit and what have you. But if you wanted a really basic one, let's just do a new macro, give it a name, roll 1d20. I'm going to have it go in chat, so it's not a script that's going to run, it's a chat message that it's going to go in. And then the command is /roll 1d20. Pretty universal for a lot of virtual tabletops. That will roll a 20-sided dice. You click save macro, and then click this button. It rolls a d20 for me. Also, don't need to click it. If I press 1, like I'm in an MMO, it also does it for me. You can have multiple bars, macros. You can go crazy with them. That is a whistle-top tour of setting up a game in Foundry using Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition as an example. It was not short. My recording's currently at an hour on the dot just now. And it will probably be cut down, but there is a lot to go through. But it seems quite scary at first, but I think once you kind of get used to how the user interface works, it's really quite logical. I think I mentioned multiple times that you don't want to change folder names, and I don't know whether I ever actually explicitly explained why, so I'm just going to very briefly do that as my final kind of closing thought, which is, if you change the folder name, then every single file link breaks, right? So this acolyte, this image for this acolyte is in Systems, D&D 5e, Tokens, Humanoid, Acolyte, right? So if I changed any of these folders, let's say I changed it to human rather than humanoid, I would then have to go in and change this image file path as well. So that's why, if I go back to here, we've got worlds that are no longer called what they're called. So again, I've got Asunder when it's Sundered Empire, because it's just so much effort to then change every single one of these maps. And I'd have to change any other things that I had, like, you know, token art and what have you that might have been saved in there. For ages, we ran on a game system where the folder was called Star Wars Test or SW Test because I created it as a test and I never bothered to replace it. So it was all in Star Wars Test until we moved out of Star Wars Test. So yeah, once you create a folder and you start putting stuff in that folder that links to other things, so like token art, item artwork, music files, that sort of thing, as soon as you start doing that, renaming that folder becomes so much admin work to then update all of the things that were in that folder. So basically, it's not worth it. Just think of a logical file naming convention beforehand, and if you end up going, all of my Star Wars token art's just in a folder called token art, then, and I don't want it intermingled with my D&D stuff, fine, just make a D&D one and call it token art again, but just have them be separate, or have token art 2 or whatever. You know, just some food for thought. Okay, that is, as I say, a not very quick tour of Foundry Virtual Tabletop and creating a game within it. There is a lot more to dig into with this virtual tabletop, but honestly, what I've been kind of chomping at the bit to do for a while now is just talk to you about so many of the different modules that I love. So I think the next video is probably going to be talking about some different modules. I'll probably choose like a couple to go through rather than do one at a time in the next video. And I'll probably talk about the module that made me jump ship in the first place, because I was running on Roll20 for a long time. But I saw a post on Reddit one day about Foundry Virtual Tabletop and a module within it, and I went, you have my attention. And I've been here ever since. I really thought that would be like a 20-minute video, and who knows, I might edit it down. It's not going to be 20 minutes though, that's a lot of content to cut out, but who knows how short it'll be. Eventually I'm going to get to the ballpark where I'm doing 20-minute videos, and this waffling ending is not helping the length of this video. So thank you for watching, hope you found this helpful, talking about how to create a game in Foundry. Obviously we don't talk about how to create the game and the actual like server in here. That's because I barely understood how to do it the first time and I had to watch someone who was much smarter than me. But I will put a link in the description down below to the video I used on how to do port forwarding if that's the route you want to take. But hey, I hope you found this helpful, and if you are using Foundry or giving it a go or interested in any other topics, please do comment down below and let me know. In the meantime, hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful week, wonderful month, wonderful year, and hey, let's roll some dice.